Okay, welcome back to the Sports Business Institute and Latin Business Today. I'm here today with a very special gentleman and appreciate him taking the time, Mr. Roy Silver. Roy, welcome to Latin Business Today and SBI.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
It's my pleasure. We got introduced through a mutual friend, one we both played ball with together. Why don't you start by walking us kind of through your baseball background and where you grew up and things of that nature?
Um, Dix Hills, Long Island, and Little League, the whole process of youth baseball, and got good enough to start playing some travel ball. Back then, it was more like town versus town, and my town didn't have a lot of summer baseball. It was more of a tennis community and golf community. Um, so I was recruited by Lindenhurst to go play the summers with them, the Long Island Comanches, and spent 5 summers with them, and it was a great experience. And that led into that was during my high school years, and then ended up graduating high school and going to play at a small school in St. Pete, Florida, Eckerd College.
Okay.
Yep.
And so our mutual friend Bob Dubkowski, I actually played baseball with Bob before I moved away when I was going to 10th grade to move up to Rhode Island. But we played baseball and football together. We won a football championship in ninth grade together. I played with Bob and John Wachowski and Russ Kaminsky and all the skis from Lindenhurst. And great bunch of guys and a great bunch of athletes. Obviously, you got John, who went on to play in the NFL, and Bob, and this is pre social media and pre Facebook and pre all email even. So, when you move at that age, it's hard to stay in touch because unless you're going to sit and write letters or make phone calls. So we did lose touch over the years, other than losing a mutual friend whom I'm sure you probably met as well, Georgie Vega.
Yep. Played with George.
Yeah, great, and a great catcher, and another another great kid, and gone way too young. I think he was 17 when he died, leukemia.
Yeah, we were in high school. Yep.
Yep. And so, and a lot of people took that very hard, including me. And but I had the privilege of playing with those guys, and some really great athletes. So, I know you must have been a really good player because to be recruited to play, with Bob, and I mean I know Bob's dad was one of the coaches. It must have been a lot of fun for you. What position did you play, Roy?
It's funny. George Vega's father was a police officer, NYPD, as my dad was.
Okay.
So they were talking. They met at work in the city, and two. George had a younger brother, and then myself. So
Yes.
two Vegas, and I went over to work out with the Comanches on a Saturday when I was 13, and that's basically the connection was Mr. Vega, and then I made the team as an outfielder, but
Okay.
I mostly played infield from my the local stuff that I did, and in high school I ended up catching, but on the Comanches I played right field pretty much for the next 4 or 5 years. That's where they needed me.
Yep. Very good. So, and then you played other sports in high school, right? You were track and field and wrestler and basketball.
I actually played football my senior year. I convinced my dad to let me play football.
Nice.
He always thought I'd get hurt for baseball, but I played football. I had played soccer before that. And then I did wrestle up until 10th grade. And then I just kind of concentrated on baseball. And I played football, like I said, my senior year, and it was a great time. But baseball was my number one love.
Yeah. 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 Like I said, wrestling when I was in Lindenhurst was a big sport.
Yeah.
And in Long Island, it's a big sport. And when I moved away, the school I moved to up in Western Rhode Island, they did not have it as a sport. And so, but to that point, how important do you feel it is? Because it seems to me like nowadays, younger people are being driven into one sport. If you're a lacrosse player, they want you to play lacrosse year round, soccer year round. How important is it for young people to play multiple sports like you did?
It's a lost. We're going to call it an art. It's a lost activity. Kids are concentrating at such a young age on one sport. I think it's a detriment because they get mentally burnt out, emotionally burnt out, and physically. I think one sport gives the rest to certain body parts, like a throwing arm in baseball. It's nice to take 4 or 5 months off, and if you're playing football or basketball, you're not having that throwing motion over the top. I mean, you can still hurt yourself, but I think mentally and emotionally, the break from any sport is healthy. And I coached some travel ball teams a few years back here in high school, and I had a kid walk up to me. He was 16 years old. He said, "Coach, I'm burnt out. I don't even know if I want to play in college anymore." And he was a really good player. He had speed. He could have played football or basketball. But everybody thinks in the United States that, you start earlier, you start training harder, you pay more money, and you get your so-called 15 minutes of fame. And that's a lie, just an outright lie. And ironically, I ran a baseball academy for 16 years, and we did not lie to the public. And we were very proud of that. We recommended that kids leave, even if you want to go fishing with your dad, or go play another sport. Get off the baseball field. It's not healthy to be doing this all year round. And many of them listened, and many of them did not.
Yeah, life balance, boy. It just whether it's work and family and home and things, it's easy to get burnt out. And I feel so bad for a lot of these kids because they just seem to be pushed into this one sport mentality, or just kind of focus on this, like you're saying. So I think obviously a lot of things have changed, and in a little while we're gonna talk about the state of the game of baseball in general as compared to when we were kids. But I get the impression just from talking to you, this is the second time we've talked and reading up on you, that family is a big part of your life. So please tell me about your family.
Yeah, I mean, been married 31 years, and my wife and I have 2 girls. They're grown. They're pretty much gone. They're 27 and 23, and that's where I spent 16 years running a baseball business so that I could stay at home. I was in pro ball for 16 years and then left for 16 years, and now I've been back for the last 7 years full time, now with the Texas Rangers. But I spent 14 years with the Cardinals after college. I played 8 years. I managed 6 years in the minor leagues, and I managed 2 years for the Rays. And I got a calling from the good Lord up above, and I just wanted to stay in baseball. But I created a baseball academy called the Winning Inning, and we ran it out of Clearwater, Florida for 16 years. We started it when my oldest daughter was in kindergarten, and God blessed it for 16 years, and almost to the day of our youngest daughter graduating from high school, 16 years worth of business. And that was great, but it was also time for me to move on. And I got back into professional baseball with the Texas Rangers. And while I was in business, we kept our feet, kept my toes in the professional door. We would facilitate professional athletes in the off season, healthy ones that lived in Florida, ones that were hurt that we wanted. My business partner was a trainer, an athletic trainer. So we would rehab some injuries. And then there was those guys that needed rehab of other sorts, guys that were wayward off the field, and carved a little niche for ourselves where baseball is not who I am, it's what I do. And a lot of young kids are, like we talked earlier, they're pushed into baseball being their identity. And we're in big trouble in life if our job is our identity. And you can be really good at your job and be very, very wealthy, but if that is your identity, what's going to happen when it goes away, or what's the rest of your life look like? So, having a family for me was really important. And my wife helped run the business. She was our office manager, and 2 girls grew up there playing all kinds of sports, and we introduced them to music and dance and kept that balance through the whole thing. They both played college softball at some small schools, and they had a well-rounded upbringing. And I always told people baseball is very important to me, but it's by far the most important part of my life.
Yeah. Right. And good for you on that as well. But baseball was a very, very big part of your life for a very long time. Still is, obviously. Obviously, you go down to Eckerd to play college ball, and you never go back to Long Island, I assume, because you've lived in Florida, I think, since then, right?
Well, being Puerto Rican and Dominican,
Mm-hmm.
growing up in New York is not a good mix.
Okay.
The weather killed me. I was, I had cold-induced asthma. I had allergies. I loved growing up in New York, but once I came and spent my first winter in St. Pete, Florida, I was hooked. That's where my Latin blood wanted to stay. I'll never say I'll never live in New York again, but it would take a special situation to get me back up there, for especially for the winters.
Yeah, I hear you. It's funny because I we moved away from Long Island when I was, like I said, in high school, and I mean, I loved it. I loved growing up there, but I would never move back to Long Island either. I live in Connecticut now, but the only thing that will bring me back to Long Island, and I tell my kids all the time, is Patsy's Bakery in Lindenhurst has the best Italian ice.
Well, you can always go back for an ice.
I guess so. It'd be a 2-hour drive for an Italian ice, and my wife would think I'm nuts, but she already thinks that anyway. So when did the game stop you as a player? Because you obviously you were on the road and probably thought the goal is probably, like for every good minor league or college player, to make it to the majors. When did it stop for you?
I played through college. I got signed as a non-drafted free agent in 1984 out of Eckerd with the St. Louis Cardinals, and I played through 1991. I got to AAA for a couple of years and had a couple of injuries, and they had me from the beginning as coaching material. I didn't want to become a coach. They talked to me about it my first year in pro ball, and I told them, "Hey, I'd like to climb this ladder as a player." But
Yeah.
they said, "No, you'll have a chance to do that, but we see you in the future as." And sure enough, 7 years later, they made me a minor league manager, and I
Nice.
managed in the minor leagues for 6 years with them, and then 2 years with the Rays. But I finished playing in '91, and it was a shoulder injury, pretty much. I just was tired of dealing with it. I had surgery 2 years earlier. I was a really pretty good hitter, contact hitter. I ended up playing many positions just to get out of A ball. But being able to catch, being able to play some third base, a little bit of first base, but I was mainly an outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was a great run. I have no regrets. I played hard in high school, college, played hard in pro ball. And, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. Well, listen, not many people can say that. I mean, you really you pursued your dream. You got to a great point, and you were successful. And clearly, it's funny you should mention about coaching and becoming a coach and a manager, because my philosophy, and this is just me, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel that the guys who aren't the best players, or not, I'll use Pete Rose as an example. Pete Rose was obviously one of the greatest hitters of all time. Great player, hustled, played the game the right way. Not talking about what happened after that, or any of the other stuff right now, because that's not the point. But he was not a great manager. And in my opinion, I don't. To me, it's harder for a guy who's got those great innate skills as a player to get that across to guys who don't have those same skill sets. In other words, if you're an observer of the game, you're especially catchers. I think catchers really make good managers for a reason, because they really observe and watch the game.
Yeah, usually they don't have the patience. I mean, if you look in basketball at Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and like you said, Pete Rose, but Joe Torre, was a pretty good ball player, and ended up becoming a good manager. But most of them don't have the patience. Why can't you do what I did? It's not that hard.
Right.
Do this. Do it this way. I can't understand that. And you sit around as a coach, if you don't have the patience to endure
Yeah.
and get through the mishaps and the poor decisions and the inability to make the same shot or to hit the same pitch that you were able to do. Yeah, you can't coach. You don't, and you probably don't need to coach. You know, it's better that you don't, because you have to have great patience. And I think that's a really good point, and it's important because coaching is not for everybody.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned skills. You know, there's this thing called talent that the great players have, and the three things that we can't teach, which the industry continues to try to teach, are raw arm strength, raw running speed, and raw power. Those are three things that, you know, Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, they were born with it. You know, Hank Aaron, those guys could run, they could throw, and they could hit the ball far. So when you talk about five tools, there's the other two tools that are more blue collar, are the ability to contact the baseball like Pete Rose did, as good as anybody, and catching the ball with the leather, you know, the defense, catching ground balls. And for me, a sixth tool, which isn't talked about enough, is the mind and the heart combined, which is like your character. You know, how hard do you work every day? Your mindset, you know, can you adjust your mindset? And do you have the heart to overcome, especially in baseball, all the failure that comes with being a great hitter? You know, you're going to fail 75% of the time. You're not going to get a good result. And you're still considered a great player. And people don't understand how hard that is. And that's the toughest part of playing baseball, is the adversity. But, you know, we have baseball academies, and we have now in professional baseball, we're trying to create Mike Trouts and Mickey Mantles, and you can't do it. Those guys are born.
That's right. That's right. But you could say the same thing for like LeBron James, right? This is, and for lack of a better phrase, he's like a freak. I mean, these you know, it's just not, it's not normal to have this kind of ability coming out of high school and to be that developed and physical, you know. And that's, you're right. There's, and by the way, I love the sixth tool thing, because I have reams of, I keep a lot of notes, and one of the things that I've wanted to, and you're going to help me with this, and Bob, we're going to do this because I think the sixth tool is really the place where people should be thinking and focusing, whether it's the things you mentioned, which were perfect, as well as education and learning and growing and developing as a person. Those are things, you know, there are things that you can do without being great at anything, not just in baseball, you know, in life, like you said, in work, in your relationships. You know, it's really more than just, and we're going to lean back on my old abilities, because you know what, your old abilities eventually, if you're an athlete, especially Tom Brady aside, are gonna you know, phase out at some point, and you're gonna have to move on to something else at a pretty young age. Look at Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter, I'm not a Yankee fan, I'm a Met fan, but at the end of the day, he's probably one of the best players to play that position, and you know, retired at what, 38? This is extremely young to be retired from anything. And so, you know, go ahead, Roy. Let you comment on
At our academy, this is why I didn't make $1 million at the Winning Inning Baseball Academy. I told people the truth.
Yeah.
99% of you will not play professional baseball, not even in the minor leagues. 1% of you will. We're gonna concentrate, and I talk to all of my coaches. We're going to concentrate on the 99% of the population, because they're going to go on to do other things. And what we can develop here at this academy is a work ethic, the mindset that it takes to have that work ethic, and that those are things that translates into the next walk of life. You know, it translates into the classroom. It translates out into the business world, construction workers. What kind of a mindset do you have to repeat the same drill every day and have it be, you know, something that hopefully you learn how to enjoy. You know, love is not a feeling. Love is it's an action. It's a verb. It's a commitment, you know, and just like in a marriage, there's a lot of trying times, and it's not always the fairy tale that we want it to be, or things of that nature. But baseball's no different. Sports are no different. But most of us are going to do something else for a living. You know, you and I are classic examples. We're not playing. We didn't play on TV for 20 years. I got closer than most, but still didn't map out. So we would tell the kids, 99% of you are not going to play professional sports, because that is the math. 1% of our population or less gets a chance to play minor league baseball. So we want to prepare you for life. Now, that 1%, they have to fall in line with the other 99%. And if they get to the big leagues, hopefully they're a good interview. Hopefully they're good people off the field. Hopefully they can keep that balance in their life. Hopefully baseball is not their identity. How many professional athletes or baseball players have we met? I've gotten to meet a lot of them later in life, and it's a disappointment to meet them in real life, because they were great on the field, and off the field they're a hot mess. And it's sad, because as great as you are on the field, that's over, you know, and maybe you're still making some money off your autographs and things of that nature, but it's not fun to watch. It's called the lack of maturity.
Well, let's talk about one of those guys, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think you know, this is something, and a lot of people know, you know, the Josh Hamilton story, and you worked with Josh, and Josh was an exceptional baseball player, but just had to really overcome the demons. I don't even know how he's doing now. Hopefully, you can answer that question. But you know, kind of, I mean, really, I mean, his career could have been something very special if it weren't for that.
Yeah, I speak of these things. I try not to speak unless I'm asked, because Josh is an amazing story, and he fits an example of what I just talked about. He's that 1%. I mean, he was born with a 6'5", 235-pound body, size 18 shoe, hands probably like LeBron James, and just God's gift to baseball. He could throw a ball 96 miles an hour with his left arm in high school, and he could run a 6'4", 6'3", 60, and he could hit balls over the light tower. And those are things you just couldn't teach. I got him. He was already suspended for 3 years from baseball, and basically got him back on his feet off the field, which was the key to him being able to become an MVP, 5-time All-Star, 2 consecutive World Series with the Texas Rangers. But to say that the balance in his life has been able to be kept up, I can't say that for sure. But the time frame that we spent together was very good, and it was good for both of us. You know, I learned a lot from Josh. I believe he learned a lot from me, and it wasn't me per se. It was our organization, the Winning Inning, everybody involved, and also it was timing, because there was a lot of good men that had invested in Josh way before me. It just wasn't time. When I got him, it was literally rock bottom. The only place that Josh could go before he came to me was either death or jail. That's where he was at. And I personally like that spot, because now this young man is out of money. He's out of options. And it's either this way or the highway. And a lot of American kids, aside from Josh, they have too many options. We stress our kids out by filling their closets with too many clothes. If there's less clothing, there's less stress. There's more clothing. How many times have you heard, I don't have anything to wear? That drives me crazy. You don't? No, you do. You're just trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you're not looking at the same closet that I'm looking at, but more leads to stress, and it leads to complications. It leads to, it's where we are today in America. We've got way too many options. And honestly, I just took a job during the pandemic. Baseball was on hold, and I'm blessed to have kept my job with the Rangers. But for about 6 months, I worked for a roofing company. And it was amazing to watch the mindset of a champion being a roofer. and the heat down in Florida and getting up on that roof, and they don't have options. So they have to get up on that roof every day, tear off every nail, every shingle, every piece of paper down to the wood, replace the wood that was rotted out, and then put another roof on, and then do it again the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And in America, we're like, we're not doing those jobs. We've got people coming in from other countries and they want it. And then if we got rain 2 or 3 days, they'd be like upset. I didn't come to the United States to lay in bed. I need to go work because I'm trying to send money back home. I'm trying to maintain my family, not just my immediate family, but so, you know, the mindset of back to the Josh Hamilton story. It's like, you know, when you're young and you grow up and, you know, like an American kid does, and all these different options. Josh was very distracted, and he fell to some of those distractions, and able to get him focused there for a period of time, and he accomplished amazing things. You just don't, like I said earlier, the things he could do with the baseball were unbelievable. You couldn't teach him. And literally 7 months after the rock bottom, he was in the big leagues with the Cincinnati Reds, and then he got traded to the Rangers, and you know, for a period of time there, he was the best player in the game, bar none.
Yeah. And not to single him out because there have been others who've had similar type problems. So, but I know you had the connection to him, and thank you for sharing that, Roy. So, you mentioned the Rangers. Can you tell us about your current role with the Rangers, kind of what you do for them?
Yeah, it's a unique role. It's a special assistant player to player development. Player development is basically the minor leagues. And I was a manager before I started the baseball academy. And after the 16 years of the academy, I come out of there with this little niche carved for myself. And sometimes it's to my benefit, sometimes it's to my detriment. But, you know, I don't just work with young men that are having trouble off the field, but all young men need guidance. You know, our kids need guidance, and it doesn't always come from mom and dad. And as a coach, if we're not able to mentor, if we're not able to counsel, then if we're not patient, we're not able to break down the fundamental of teaching, then we can't coach. Don't talk to me about coaching if you can't accomplish those things. There's other things you can help with, you know, but if you can't look at a young man, break him down fundamentally, and also break him down fundamentally off the field as well as on the field, eventually, you know, and some of these kids are great kids. They get up in the morning, they have routines, they're disciplined. We don't have any problem with them. But most kids, you know, or they have freedom for the first time, and they don't know how to get up in the morning on their own. And those are the types of things that I work with most of the time. I still love the process of the field, but I call it, I'm a coach of foul territory. And in pro ball, we spend a lot more time in foul territory than we do in fair territory. And that's important to know. And I say that to every middle school, every high school, every college coach. If you're not willing to put up with the problems that come with life on and off the field, then you're not ready to coach.
Yeah. Again, well put. And I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions and let you go because I know you're busy. But before I do, for people who see this and see your background, could you tell us a little bit about that picture? Because you told me before we started.
Yeah. Our oldest daughter, she does mission work in Kenya. And I met her there in 2016. And I went there for a month, and it was one of the greatest experiences. Anyway, we went on a safari, and I pulled up on these lines where I took this picture with the camera on my phone, and it's just kind of cool. And how smart am I? I lowered the window. I lower the window halfway down. It's an electronic window, and I'm getting ready to take the picture. And I'm like, what if this window decides not to go up, and one of these guys, even though they were looking at me like they were well fed, and I don't think I was, but I was not gonna, you know. I just started thinking, what if this window fails me, and one of these guys decides to stick his paw, and they're just beautiful, strong, humongous animals, and I just love the picture.
Yeah, no, it's a great picture, and that's really cool that you got to do that. And also, very cool, in my opinion, what your daughter's doing as well. So, Roy, when the first time we spoke, the only other time we spoke, and I hope to do this a lot more, but we both expressed concerns about the game of baseball in the U.S. It's just not, not the same from when we were kids. Doesn't seem to have the same excitement for kids. It just doesn't seem to be something that the kids want to spend their time, getting involved with because of many different reasons, I guess. But maybe you have a better answer. What do you think's going on?
It goes back to, we live in a great country with many freedoms, and we have a lot of luxuries, and a lot of things are, at the expense of our morality, at the expense of things that take time and patience. And baseball's a game of time and patience. I used to go with my dad, and if we went to the ballpark, the game slows down. You're talking about something else during the game, and all of a sudden the game speeds up or it gets close. Now you're back into the game. Some people think that's boring. Other people, like you and I, it's kind of a great memories but the society, how fast we move now, I think there's a lot of variables. The cell phone, you go to the game and people are glued to their cell phones, or they've got all these scoreboards with all these other actions going on, which is not bad. And you have the swing set in right field, and you have the petting zoo in left field. And, it's nice that families are enjoying that time, but, you can do a lot of those things at other places. And the game, I think, is sometimes it's on the background of the forefront of what you're there to see. And, when I was young, most women knew, most of the players. And nowadays, these kids that play high school ball, they don't even know who Barry Bonds was. And they don't know anything about Pete Rose other than maybe he was a gambler. They don't realize what a great player. The recent Wade Boggs went to high school down here in Plant. And you ask most kids right now who Wade Boggs is, they don't know. And these are kids that are 18, 19. That was unheard of when you and I were 15, 16. The history of the game was shown to us by our dads, and we had baseball cards, and we had quiz books and historical books that we would just devour. But there's just so many, and the game takes 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. I don't know, a couple of years ago, the World Series, they had a rain delay. So they suspended the game. I believe it was in the fourth inning. We came back the next day and they played a 5-inning game. And I just watched it that night and I go, that was pretty exciting. It was, I think, an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe that's part of the answer. Maybe instead of 9 innings, 7 innings, or heck, why not 5 innings? Maybe so many strikeouts now. Fans don't enjoy that. I think fans want to see good defensive plays. The strike zone was expanded. There's a lot of people throwing harder. They're not throwing harder. There's more people throwing hard. We always had guys like Randy Johnson that threw hard, but there's more players now, more pitchers throwing hard. The devices that are measuring that are measuring it closer and closer to the hand, which makes the velocity seem to be going up. But we comb the whole earth now, and we look for great arms, and there's a lot of great arms with an expanded strike zone, which leads to a lot of strikeouts, and it's boring to the fan. They do like the sexy home run, but there's too few of those to fill in the gap. So, I know it's flourishing well in Latin America and in the Far East, and maybe growing in Australia still. But, the United States, I think most kids can take it or leave it at this point. It's kind of sad because I love the game. I love everything about it. I used to practice breaking up double plays. You don't even see that anymore. You can't even do that anymore. I used to practice, jumping over my fence, making a great catch like Mike Trout does. And, those are things we used to do on our own without our parents. And that's the other part. Kids don't do anything without their parents anymore. Everything has to be structured and organized. And I learned more about, fighting and defending yourself by playing sandlot baseball against the other street, and you learn how to settle disputes and conflict. And a lot of our kids grow up not having any of those skills that you can acquire through competition. But I hope that there's a little bit of a turnaround, but it's tough to watch sometimes, the way that it's evolved. It's gonna survive. I just don't know that it's ever gonna be that really big number one popular sport that it once was.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of changes, at the highest level, and I think this is probably the mindset, I would think, of the commissioner and his uh, associates, that try to get the enthusiasm, the interest back in the game somehow. To me, I don't like. Well, I don't like the DH either. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm a National League guy, and I like when pitchers hit, and I like when they get a hit. So, but I think I'm a really dying breed in that area. But I really agree with. I think it's a cerebral game. It's a game that you follow along with, you think along with the manager. It's always why you're questioning anything from a pitch that was called to, the strategy of when to run a runner. And I think for me, when I watch a major league game and I see somebody make a mental mistake or a base running mistake, I get annoyed, because I think that should never happen at that level. That's the highest level of baseball. That should never happen, because those guys, they should be in it really. We know they have the athletic ability and the natural abilities to what they're doing, but it's really a game that's up here. So with that said, and I thank you again for your input. We are working, and you're hopefully going to join us with Bob and some others. We're working with a project with Bhutan, the country of Bhutan, which, if you ask me to point it out on a map, I think I might struggle, but we do have a connection to that country, and we're going to hopefully bring some people over, and hopefully they're going to meet with you and some other people, and then maybe we can start to work this, international flavor, because I mean, we really should, concerned about what's happening here in the States that's one thing. I think there's a lot of issues with sports in general, and I think the COVID problem, really exacerbated that, especially with people who have lost a year of eligibility and things like that. But why don't you just we'll finish up here in a second, but I'd like for you to, if you wouldn't mind, Roy, if you were to give advice to somebody who was, okay, listen, this is my goal. I want to play in college, or I want to play in the majors, or I want to get that contract, or I think I'm good enough. And if you wouldn't mind answering this in Spanish, just because this is Latin business today, and I think it would be kind of nice to hear. I apologize, and I'm ashamed that I probably won't be able to understand only but a couple words, but please answer that question for me.
Bueno, si ustedes creen que tienen la habilidad de correr rápido, un poder con el bate que no es normal, y también un brazo fuerte, y también tienen el ánimo y el refuerzo para trabajar fuerte con el guante y también con el bate, haciendo contacto con la pelota, y es un amor con el juego, hay que empezar desde hoy trabajando más fuerte. Y no es un juego fácil, es difícil, pero si tienen el sueño de llegar a Grandes Ligas, yo no quiero matar el sueño, pero es un camino muy difícil, y suerte con ese camino.
Okay.
That's about it.
I'm going to have that translated. I'm going to trust that you weren't playing me.
Yeah, I was talking about you the whole time.
I was waiting for cerveza. That's the only word I really kind of gravitate towards. Yeah. But so listen, Roy Silver, we thank you again for your time. Anything you want to add, or anything we should know before we sign off?
Dave, it's just the passion and the heart I have for people is really what's the most important part of if I was a plumber or a musician, I think I would use those activities to reach young men. And I actually coached a lot of girls softball, young women. Just I have a heart for mankind, and waking up in the morning with some sort of a heart or a mindset to do what's right, and not just thinking about yourself, but think about the person to your left and to your right, practicing empathy. So this is just things that we're trying to get across to our players, you know, with the Texas Rangers, and any other time I cross paths with a man, even men our age, you know, what are we doing to make the world a better place? And I don't mean that like a bumper sticker. I mean, like, you know, let's make changes in ourselves that will help us to have the people around us grow.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but we can do it.
I'm holding this up, but you can't see it because of my virtual background, but it says, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's certainly a philosophy that I think you're saying, and I agree with. So thank you for that. God bless you. And I really look forward to coming down and seeing you in person someday soon.
Let's do it, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy.